All right, and we are back and live. All right, gang. Welcome back to the soapbox. It's been a crazy couple weeks in our small world in our CrossFit community. Last episode we put out it was on the current state of the landscape of our community, and a lot of good feedback, and obviously my most listened to episode, and pertinent times, and hopefully it helped a little bit, just kind of get insight where we're at, and I really appreciate the feedback and have gotten a lot of good feedback from that. So where do I want to go today? So it's Saturday, it's June 20th. There's still a lot going on and unfolding, and where I'm at right now, it's just want to wait and see and assess, and then make the best decisions based on a multitude of factors. So that's kind of where I'm at. And so right now, not really in the place or mindset to start making decisions or throwing things out there. I think that's premature. And I think people that have done that, I think you're seeing a lot of that. So I want to just make sure that we're being smart in our decisions and reading and listening and assessing. But with that said, I was doing some thinking today, and it's a tough. There's a lot going on out there in our world, and depending on the world that you're in, communities you're in, it's overwhelming. So I wanted to, and I was thinking, man, like what. This is a common feeling that I've always had, whether it's in training or working out, this notion of being overwhelmed, sometimes feeling backed into a corner. And it brought me back to something that we talk about at our Advanced Coaching Concepts course, and it's in mindset, and it's called an anchor point. And I wanted to talk about sort of my anchor points, and in delivering this lecture that I have for the past couple of years, and kind of massaging it to my 2 points. And I really actually have, because there's often, when you think about an anchor point, you think about something that you go back to that gives you inspiration, it gives you hope, that drives you forward when you don't necessarily have that hope with you. And that's important to have, and it's your anchor point. I actually have two, because I'm a believer in, and I think I've discussed this on the podcast, of the pendulum theory, where in order for things to swing in one direction, you have to swing in the equal and opposite direction. Sadly, I think that, like for a lot of us, like, we're swinging in a pretty extreme direction right now that's negative, but I do believe that there's a beautiful positive on the other side of that. But we have to be able to remain hope and keep our eyes forward, and keep working and keep doing what we're doing, and making positive changes, even though it might be small. And with that said, there's two moments in my life and athletic career, not necessarily life, that really make me remember many values, struggles, triumphs, lessons, when it's easy to forget them in certain moments. So let me start with one of the hardest moments I ever had, and it was in the 2013 CrossFit Games. And it was the first event, the burden run. And this burden run was, for those of you that are unfamiliar, it was at the Home Depot Center. We utilized the entire campus. We ran, I think it was 3 miles to start, and we entered into the outside stadium, and which is where they had what they called the pig, which was essentially like a the very first iteration of a standardized tire flip. And then you'd flip that all the way down about 100 yards, and it was so heavy. You'd flip that, and then after that, you would grab a log, and I don't know how much the log was, but it was, big old log. You throw the log on your shoulder, and I think you ran like about a mile with it back into the soccer stadium. And then you had a sled, and the sled was a drag sled over the shoulders, and it was if there was 50 competitors. There was 50 sleds. It was an epic scene. And I came into the stadium and I was like third overall. And you don't really know that depending on the race because it was all over the place. But you come into the stadium, all the sleds were still there essentially. And so you get to pick your lane, you grab your sled, you grab your straps, you put it over your shoulder, and then you would just essentially march it all the way down. It was maybe half the soccer field, if that. I mean, you could see the finish line, and it was a heavy sled, but it was by no means insurmountable. And so I grab the sled and I start pulling, and you lean and you walk. And I never had pulled a sled like this at this point in time in my career, like a lot of things at that time. So many times it was a first at the CrossFit Games. And I just remember I got to the halfway part and I couldn't pull the sled anymore. And it just stopped. And I tried everything that I could have imagined to do in the moment. And watching, essentially, I was in like first place, second or third place. I mean, it was like there was no one in front of me. And then watching the entire field come into and you could hear the crowd getting louder and louder, and then you feel the energy. The next thing I felt and saw the other competitors getting by me and then going by me, then finishing, and just watching this, for the first, second, or third place finish evaporate right in front of me into almost the last place finish. And once a few other people were finished, they came over. They were trying to, give me advice and help me out. Finally, someone told me to choke up on the straps more. And as soon as I did that, I was able to finish it with at that time felt like a relative ease. Wasn't even a challenge. It was just, I just coasted it in. And I just remember I was so demoralized. I looked in the stands. My wife was crying. I'm a mess. It was the first event. Coming off, I think, I think I finished 8th the year prior to that. A lot of pressure on me. I was 8th in the world, and there was a lot of, I think I won the regional that year. And I felt so broken. I felt so defeated. I was embarrassed. And for the rest of the games that year, it was the most unpleasant games I've ever had, because I was then at that point in the last heat, or the first heat. I was in the last group of people on the standings. I couldn't get out of that. I was mentally and emotionally just a mess, and I'll never forget that, because it wasn't fun. I was not enjoyable to be around. You work your whole lot, your year, and then and next thing you know, it's a miserable experience. And it was all because of my mindset, that moment. And I utilized that as something to go back on, because I learned so many lessons beyond choking up on the sled. How important your mindset is in a workout and across a competition, and how your mind has such a beautiful power over what your body can actually do. And it's in how you carry yourself, it's how you communicate, it's how you interact. And then therefore that really does translate to how you perform. And then from there, a belief in your ability, a belief where you belong. Do you belong? And if you are amongst the best, if you're in the final heat, if you're with the best athletes, next thing you know, you are playing up because you believe that you've earned to be there. And these are all just, does anything change in your ability? No. It doesn't. It's your mindset. And that's a moment I'll never forget. I'll never forget that feeling. It gives me goosebumps. I get emotional when I think about it, because I remember what it feels like to be in that moment. And it's weird, because it's a moment that I'll never forget, but it's a moment that I cherish. And it's very strange, hard to explain, but it's an anchor point. Because I didn't just stop, I didn't just quit. I kept doing what I was doing the rest of that year. I don't even know where I finished that year, but not great. And it's important for me to remember that. It's important to remember also the beautiful things about that. How well I did in that event. It was really, there's so many great things, just one negative thing, and it's easy to just remember that piece. retelling the story is almost cathartic for me. And the other anchor point that I have that I often think about is it's on the other end of the spectrum. It's sort of that moment that I'll never forget in my athletic career from a positive perspective. It's 2016. And the year prior, I missed the CrossFit Games. I missed the CrossFit Games because of a snatch that I didn't hit. I missed my third lift. That third lift is the lift that if I hit, I would have gone, right? And obviously the what ifs, I could have done better in other events, but that's sort of what it boiled down to. For those of you that know me, the snatches and Olympic lifts are something I've always struggled with. I spent a lot of time doing these movements and even at my best was never really great, just a struggle to keep up. And I missed the CrossFit Games. For me, it was easy to point right at that because it should never have been my last lift, that my first lift should be able to get me there and the other things, right? So clearly there's a weakness, and I missed it. The next year at regionals, we're now in Hartford. First time we were in Hartford, new place. Of course, a very similar event. It was a snatch into a handstand walk. And then I think the next year, the year that now I'm discussing was, I think, a handstand walk and then into a 1-rep max snatch. He had, I think, 3 attempts. And the way it was set up, you had like 2 lines of 10 athletes, and you'd go 2 athletes would go at a time, and they'd be set off by the announcer. Really, really exciting. The whole arena full, super exciting. People announcing their weights, crowds going crazy. But then they're done. The next people go. Really, they had like 30 seconds, and then the next couplet went, and the next couplet went, and it went through twice, super quick. I'm warming up in the back, listening to the lifts, and I knew that my goal weight was 245 pounds. I had to hit that snatch based off where everyone was at in order to stay in the fight, to stay in the game. And we get out on the floor, do the handstand walk. I don't even remember the handstand walk. Blacked that out. I couldn't even tell you. And I remember, it's funny, like I was right behind Craig Kenny, who's my good friend of mine, and he's super strong, and I didn't even pay attention to what he was doing. Wasn't even in the same stratosphere as me. But I'll never forget. So you had, I think it was 2 lifts, and my first lift was 225. And then I remember, 3, 2, 1 lift. I missed 225 originally. And then but you could lift as much as you wanted in 30 seconds. And I reset and I just ripped it up and I got it. Panic, right? Of course, I miss 225, my first lift. Heart's in my throat, but I pull it together. I get 225. I get a number on the board. Goes back around. Now it's time for my second lift. And I'm towards the end, so I'm at the very. I'm like, I think I was like maybe in the 10th lane. So which means at that way that looked is like I was the last one of the last lifters, and I put 245 on the bar, but I knew as I was listening, I actually put 246 on the bar. I put fractionals on because I knew that would have put me over a few people, and hopefully that pound wouldn't make much of a difference, and I set up. And I knew walking up to the bar that this lift is the lift that gets me to the CrossFit Games, and I do remember it so vividly. I remember just establishing my hook grip. I remember setting up, and I just remember I don't remember anything else other than standing up with the bar overhead, and I'll never forget that feeling of it. I was so happy, excited, relieved, and there's a video of me like, of just going wild, throwing my arms up in the air, and it was so awesome. And my celebration's completely ridiculous. It's not really cool, but for me, it was awesome. And later on, my wife told me her eyes were closed and watched 1 second of my lift, and I knew in that. And I think like right behind me, like Craig Kenny lifts 285 or something. The crowd's going wild for him but I thought the crowd was going wild for me. It's great. The energy is energy, right? Who cares? And I I'll just never forget that moment. I knew it. And then from that point on, I was just unbeatable in all the events. Like I performed, I was confident. It was just, the rest of the event almost was like, easy to execute. And I'll never forget that. It was such a special moment. It was also because the lift that put me out the year prior, I was able to, you put everything together, and it was a year's worth of work. It comes down to one 30-second interval and one lift. And it was a PR. And it was really special. And that's something I really will never forget. And that's a big anchor point for me. And I wanted to share that with you, because I do think in this time, in this day and age we're in, and there's so much unknown, find an anchor point. And the reason why I like the two ends of the spectrum is because I think it's important to remember our failures and not be defined by them, but let them shape us, let them remind us, but they don't need to imprison us. And let that positive anchor point be something that you can remember, that brings you back psychologically, mentally, emotionally to the I can attitude. I will do this, I can do this, and it will happen. The positive outlook, the realization how powerful your mind is over what you do. And remember that. And whatever it might be, it doesn't matter. And it can be a personal story. You never have to share it. But it's something that you repeat in your head, that you can go through visually and replay that movie over and over and over again. It's a narrative that you have for yourself. And for me, it's so important because I'm the type of person that it's hard work trumps everything else. And consistency and mindset. And that's what that moment is for me. It's hard work, consistency, and mindset. Because I knew I had to make the lift, and I knew I was going to make the lift, and I did. And that's important, because most of the things that I do in my life, I have to have that belief. Because if you actually look at what you're doing, oftentimes you'd be like, I'm not qualified for this, I can't do this, but you can't let that creep in. And that's what these anchor points can do for you. And then that leads into having a mantra. What is your mantra? What do you say to yourself? Right? And my mantra is very, very simple, is that, and it's not like work hard. It's and I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it's, for me, I always tell myself someone's working harder than me. Someone's working harder than me. And that's unacceptable. I want to be the hardest worker in the room. Why? Because that's who I am. I'm inspired by other people's hard work. It's not that I want to be better than them. It's not that I want to beat them. I'm inspired by them. And who is them? It doesn't matter. For me, it's a mantra. It's a made up them. And that gets me fired up. And you know what? And the more I have this type of belief and mantra, I do surround myself around people that have similar values. So there are people that inspire me and that push me and challenge me. Because you will find that with these mantras that you breathe to yourself, you will then surround yourself with individuals that have similar mindsets, and they will bring you up and they won't bring you down. You won't have a huge circle. You'll have a small circle of very like-minded individuals that push you and challenge you. It's not a closed-minded circle. In fact, it's the antithesis of. It's a very open-minded, challenging group of people. Whatever circles you might be in, but it's all based on that mantra. Anchor points, mantras, mindset. It's an important time for us to not forget and lose sight of those things. That we have the opportunity to control and to get to play to our advantage. That's what I have for you guys. Appreciate it. Be well. Be safe. Stay the course. If you have a question, hit me up. Shoot me an email. Send me a DM. Whatever it might be. I'm here for you guys. Appreciate you.